Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I am talking about Gangland's Doom, The Shadow of the Pulps, 50th Anniversary Edition. This is by Frank Eisgruber Jr. Has an introduction by Will Murray and is published by Steve Donoso for The Shadowed Circle. They're produced by The Shadowed Circle. So this is probably something quite different for most of my viewers, but this was sent to me by the publisher. They actually contacted someone, asked them if they could be put in touch with me, and asked me if I would like copy to read and review. And normally I say no, because I don't like the pressure that I feel to quickly read and give a positive review. I really, if someone has sent me something, I feel bad when I don't like it. But I'm a huge fan of the Pulps. I'm a huge fan of the Shadow. So I said yes. And they sent me this and something else that I'll be reviewing after I finish the review of this. But anyway, Gangland's Doom. This is, first of all, I'm going to share one illustration. It's full of illustrations and things, but I'll just share that one. So, publication history. It says, Gangland's Doom was first published as a booklet by Robert Weinberg in 1974. It was republished in hardcover by Starmont House in the 1980s, and then by Starmont's successor, Borgo Press, in the early mid-1990s. A revised trade paper edition was published by Altus Press in 2007. This 50th anniversary edition was produced by the Shadowed Circle and published in both trade paper and hardcover editions in 2025 by Renaissance Arts Press. This was on Kickstarter. I wish I would have known that, because I absolutely would have backed it. And then there's a note to the reader. The 50th anniversary edition of Gangland's Doom, The Shadow of the Pulps, heavily references the Shadow pulp novels published between 1931 and 1949 in the Shadow magazine. The primary sources reprinted here can contain outdated language and insensitive ethnic and cultural stereotypes from the period. Where possible, original phrasing has been retained for the purpose of historical accuracy. Discretion is advised. So there you go. And basically, this encyclopedia isn't quite the right word, I don't think, but that's the best word that I can come up with. Or a reference book. This would be perfect for anybody who was writing a Shadow story. I completely forgot. For the Too Long Didn't Watch folks, I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this. And so, as I was saying, this is a great reference book. It's got a foreword by Steve Donoso, an original publisher's preface by Robert Weinberg, updated author's preface by Frank Eisgruber Jr., and 50th anniversary introduction by Will Murray. Will Murray has written a bunch of stuff under his own name, but written tons and tons of stuff as a ghostwriter, and has written 2 novels that have a Doc Savage and the Shadow crossover. I've read one of them so far. And what I like about the updated author preface is that he says right off the bat, or at least somewhere in it, he says, this isn't the most well-written book. And if he hadn't said that in his preface, I might have not given this the total 5 out of 5, because there are places where the writing isn't great. But published in 1974, and the writer admits it's not the greatest writing, but it is so fascinating as a fan of the Shadow to read all of this stuff, have it all at my fingertips. And it is mostly the Walter Gibson written pulp novels. Maxwell Grant was the pen name that the publisher used. but Walter Gibson wrote the majority of the books, but there were a couple other people that wrote them. And he talks about how you can basically tell when a different author is writing a shadow story. Um, no radio show. Tiny mentions of the radio show, but really this isn't about the radio show, any movies, comic books, anything else, just those original pulp novels. And it has such things as chapter 1 is identity, true. And so this tells us all about the absolute real identity of the shadow. Chapter 2 is and false, where it goes into other aliases that the shadow has used, including the one that I think most people think is his real identity. Then we have agents and allies, an alphabetical list of all of his agents, allies, friends, all of these characters. The Sanctum talks about basically the two secret headquarters that he has had. The villains, again, a list of major villains and recurring villains. And this is where you can see some of the updates, because it talks about his most famous villains, Sawan. I'm not sure about the pronunciation, Khan. And I think it says he appeared 3 times in the original pulps. But then it mentions the Doc Savage Shadow, one of the Doc Savage Shadow crossovers, which brings that character back. And obviously, if that book is only a few years old, this original book, 1974, I don't think that the author was looking into the future. So, updates. The villains, Travels, talks about major adventures that the Shadow had in different parts of the world. A few Shadow oddities. That was a fun little, just some trivia kind of things. And then a list of every single one of the novels. Let's see. 325. And started out monthly and then became bi-monthly, by which I mean twice a month, not every 2 months. Craziness. So many stories. I have 6 or 7 or 8 of the reprint novels. And then there's two vintage letters from Frank Eisgruber Jr. to Will Murray, and some other just interesting things. Fascinating stuff. If you're a fan of the Shadow, this is a must read. I'd say a must have. Buy it. And of course, I'll have links in the description below. But as I said, I have some of the paperback reprints, not as many as I used to. I used to have cassettes with the radio show, with some great stuff. Orson Welles as the Shadow. There was one episode where his filter to change his voice broke, and so normally when he's Lamont Cranston, he's just talking like normal, blah 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 blah, normal radio show type of voice. But then when he was the Shadow, hopefully this comes through. When he was the Shadow, he sounded like this. But in this one particular episode, he's Lamont Cranston doing his thing, and then he's the Shadow talking to the bad guy, instead of sounding like this. Which was fun. And I've got a bunch of the comic books. I actually have DC's first issue of the Shadow on my wall. You can't see it. It's over there. It's almost directly eye level right across from me. I'm a big fan. And so, yeah, not the most well written, but the author admits that. And since we're not talking about, characterization and story and plot, but something nonfiction, and, this pulp character, I think it doesn't hurt it that much It's not confusingly written, just sometimes sentence structure maybe isn't the best. Or the only thing, the one negative thing is that occasionally the author, and this is something else he admits in his preface, or forward, whatever they called it, occasionally he mentions something as if everybody should know exactly what he's talking about. Whether it's the ring that the Shadow wears or a character from the stories. And one might suppose, if you're reading a book like this, that you would know what he's talking about. But it does cut back the level of entry. Is that the best way? Now, he does go on to eventually, I think, he gets to the point where he tells you what those things are. But this isn't like, again, a novel where he's holding back a mystery. He's simply referencing things as if we should all know what he's referencing. And that's the only really negative thing. And the ring, I knew what that was. But again, I haven't read all 325 books. So there are plenty of characters I'm not familiar with. But aside from that, just a fantastic book about the Shadow. Non-fiction book about the Shadow. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I dig that cover. I dig that back cover. I'm not going to spoil all the illustrations and things that are in here. The head of each chapter has... basically, it has this shadow, and then in this space, an illustration of whatever the chapter's about. And some very cool ones. So there you go. If you're interested in the Shadow at all, I haven't really talked about what the Shadow or who the Shadow is, which I probably should have done at the beginning of this. So just in case there's anybody who doesn't know, the Shadow started out as a radio show host, just a mysterious voice hosting a mystery radio program. But the Shadow was very popular, so Street and Smith, I believe it was, who published the mystery magazine that the radio show was based on, decided to publish a series about the Shadow. And so they hired Walter Gibson, create the character, and he's a vigilante. He can obscure men's minds. He's a master of disguise. He has all of these different agents all over the city, all over the world, that are passing him information, that are helping him, that are going undercover, that are doing all these things. And unlike Doc Savage, the Shadow has no qualms with killing, but he also occasionally gives people a second chance. So a much more violent, I'd say darker, slightly less fantastical pulp hero than Doc Savage. And I would say certainly a more well-known hero than Doc Savage. I think more people, if you threw both of those names out there, the Shadow, Doc Savage, more people will have heard of the Shadow. Whether it's just from the Alec Baldwin film or just the zeitgeist. I just think more people probably have heard of the Shadow than Doc Savage, but I haven't done a poll. I haven't done a scientific study. So anyway, yes, classic pulp mysteries with a classic vigilante. And so Gangland's Doom, The Shadow of the Pulps, 50th Anniversary Edition by Frank Eisgruber Jr. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Produced by The Shadowed Circle. Check it out. If you're a fan of The Shadow, if you're a fan of pulps in general, check this out. Excuse me. Question for the video. Are you familiar with The Shadow? Again, I would think the general populace, probably, if they have heard of The Shadow, know him from the Alec Baldwin movie from the 90s, the early aughts. I don't even remember when it came out. But I know it's Alec Baldwin, Penelope Ann Miller. I don't remember anybody else that's in it. I do. Is it Frank Boyle? Peter Boyle. Frank, because Frankenstein. Peter Boyle, right? But I can't remember when I first heard of the Shadow. If I came across one of the books. I had an aunt who would give me books for my birthday, for Christmas, sometimes just randomly. I know she gave me the first Doc Savage book I ever had. I don't know if she gave me a Shadow book or if I stumbled across. I was always looking at the cassettes and things at the local library, and maybe I stumbled across the radio show on cassette at the library. I don't recall, but ever since, and again, I'm a huge fan of the pulps, but grab the paperbacks whenever I can find them. I don't have those cassettes anymore, but I loved listening to the radio show. I have a bunch of the comics. Uh, the Alec Baldwin movie, meh. I'd have to watch it again. I wasn't completely thrilled with it, but because I don't know, it just felt too slick, too Hollywood. But maybe I should watch it again, see what I think of that. But I love the old books, the Jim Steranko covers on some of those. I don't know. I don't think he did all of them, but don't take my word for it. There was a publisher who was publishing square-bound Shadow reprints, like two of the novels in one, I think. I don't have any of those because I just wanted the paperbacks. But what about you? Do you know the Shadow? Do you know anything about him? Does it sound interesting to you? I mean, if you're not into pulp stuff, then I don't think, you're not going to suddenly become a fan of pulp fiction, not the movie, but things like Doc Savage, The Avenger, The Shadow, Conan, Tarzan, all of those pulp characters. There's plenty of the Spider. Um, you're not instantly going to become a fan, but are you familiar? Have you ever read, watched, listened to any Shadow stuff? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers, although it's a nonfiction book, so what is there to spoil? But comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. That's all I have for you. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I have been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.